What do you wish was illegal? Commercials that are louder than the program you're watching. Bots buying tickets and charging the shit out of the price. Online adverts featuring large, click here to download buttons next to the actual download link, which is generally much smaller. Convenience fees for online ticket purchases. Why am I getting charged for saving on paper, ink, and everyone's time? Companies making it really difficult to cancel things. Especially subscriptions. I think the process to subscribe to something should be exactly the same as the process to cancel it. I'm looking at you, Spotify. Not posting salaries in job descriptions. Your credit score goes down because you cancelled a credit card. Child beauty pageants. Edit. Spieling. Using children to monetize your social media channels. Radio commercials that contain a police or ambulance siren. Pet ownership. If the person has a history of animal abuse, I wish it were more strictly enforced. I'm still stunned it isn't, to be honest. I mean, it's surely got to be one of the most telling signs that a person is on a bad path if they're abusing defenseless, completely trusting creatures. Makes me so mad. Companies can keep taking money from you until you explicitly request cancellation, even if you haven't used their service. What an absurd thing to be capable of. The number of children who must send text messages to these love calculators, and then have money taken from them month after month is staggering. Hi. I'm X. We're trying to reach you regarding your car's extended warranty. Money in politics. They should be granted a wage, a reasonably high wage, but in return, they should be sent to federal pound me in the ass prison if they ever accept any bribes, donations for anything, ever. Phoning up old ladies and pressuring them into buying security systems they don't need. Oh, and that fucking cute female corpses subreddit. Refund taking more than 3 days to appear. If they can demand to get money from me on hours' notice, then I should be able to demand my cash back as fast as possible. YouTube ads that are longer than 30 seconds. There are some that are 6 fucking minutes long. Hiking up prices of life-saving medications. Insulin, EPI pens, etc. MLMs. Those super bright high beams people put on their cars. Lawyers, solicitors. What is the strangest or oddest law that's won a case for you? My brother is a lawyer. He got a DUI charge dropped for a client. Guy gets pulled over. Cop asks him to step out to perform the sobriety test after he admits to having consumed some amount of alcohol. He complies, but after stepping out of his car asks the officer if it's okay for him to reposition his vehicle to move it further away from the road because he feels uncomfortable being that close. The cop obliges. Apparently the charge got dropped because the officer willingly let an intoxicated individual operate a motor vehicle. The Canadian Interest Act specifies that all interest must be specified in a per annum percentage. If it is not, it's struck down to 5% simple interest per year. The number of lenders and creditors who try to pull off a 4% monthly compound interest, but aren't familiar with that provision of federal law. I had a case where a guy was charged for running a red light. The thing is, he had been sitting at the lights for 5 minutes and it hadn't changed. The wording of the specific section under which he was charged related to stop signs and traffic lights and referred to them as traffic regulation devices. I successfully argued that as the traffic light wasn't changing, it wasn't regulating traffic, and he got off. I couldn't believe it when the judge ruled in my favor, neither could the police prosecutor. I got a pro bono client's removal by USCIS cancelled. He had a low-level drug possession conviction from the early 1980s. During that brief period, the active ingredient of Imodium was illegal under state law but not federal law. So I successfully argued that they couldn't prove it wasn't a conviction for possession of a substance that was federally legal at the time, and as such was not subject to removal. The argument worked and my guy went back to his business and his family. Typical IANAL. But the first and only time I ever used the subway station's emergency door to get to the train, the ticket gate wasn't working. It was 3 a.m. I was a drunk college kid trying to catch the last train home. I got caught by 2 subway officers and given a ticket with a huge attempted fare avoidance fine. I showed up to the hearing in desperation, and they ended up having to drop the fine as they were reviewing the case with me because one cop had recorded that I entered through the right-hand emergency door, and the other wrote that I entered through the left-hand emergency door. Never been so grateful in my life. In 2016, prison inmate John Modi was charged with escaping from the prison in which he was incarcerated, which is a crime in Ohio. The prosecution, however, failed to establish that the Hocking Correctional Facility, and therefore the crime was located within the court's jurisdiction of Hocking County, as all witnesses potentially able to offer testimony on the prison's location had gone home for the day, and, incredibly, no one remaining could provide references allowing the court to take judicial notice of the prison's location. The charges against Modi were dismissed, and he was allowed to return to prison to serve his sentence, but at least without additional charges concerning his alleged escape. A guy got drunk and decided to ride his horse through town. This was a small town in North Carolina. Well, he would stop at each intersection and fire his pistol in the air like some Wild West cowboy. Anyway, the guy was charged with a Dewey and discharging a firearm within city limits, which was a felony. So as one would soon find, it is not just mandatory but a law that you must fire your firearm into the air at an intersection when coming through town on your horse. An old blue law that never got erased. He still got the Dewey and his horse got impounded, but the dumbfounded judge dropped the other charges. IANAL. But I won my case by exploiting a legal technicality in my jurisdiction. My case needed to be tried at a certain court, but they tried me in another court. And by trying me in the wrong court, basically broke the law. I made them aware of this, and had my case dismissed. I had one where a client was contesting a will. Halfway through the case, the other side argued that my client was set to inherit less without the will. If we won, then she would with it, if we lost, and argued she lacked standing to attack the will. The decedent had a very old will that benefited our client's deceased mother, but that will had been revoked. We found a very old doctrine in a footnote to something else entirely and argued to the judge that the law assumes you'd rather die with an old, revoked will than with none at all. Therefore, we argued he should look back to the prior will. Since our client would inherit her mother's bequest under the prior will, he held our client had standing to bring the will contest. We ended up settling the case shortly thereafter. Many years ago I actually saw this in the newspaper, but I'm now thinking it's an urban legend because I can't find anything online about it. Apparently a 20-year-old man was cited for underage drinking in Michigan. He argued that since it says in the Michigan state constitution that life begins at conception and that since he was over 20 years and 9 months old he was obviously old enough to drink. And he won. True or not, I can't say. IANALI was the defendant. I got pulled over with a girl and we both got searched as well as the car. There was some weed and a bowl on my car. They threw that in individual bags, then in a large evidence envelope. They found a small bag of cocaine on her and tossed it in the large envelope. Well, they lost her cocaine. Since there were only 2 pieces of evidence and not 3, we got off free of any fines or charges. We had 3, that's only 2. Not our stuff. Not a lawyer. But we were talking about NCAA rules for cross-country running once and we focused in on the rule that said the runner needed to have at least one shoe on when crossing the finish line. Apparently that rule's been changed now. B.C. 2021 rules say barefoot is okay. A few weeks later I was running in a separate race and had a bit of debris in my shoe that was causing immense pain. So I ripped the one shoe off and kept running with one shoe on, knowing that I needed to cross the finish line with one shoe on. I didn't win the race, but I got one of my best times and beat our best runner. Running can be a psychological thing, and running half barefoot somehow motivated me and demoralized him at the same time when I passed him carrying one of my shoes. Got a DUI dismissed because someone else had driven the car about 50 feet from where the arrest was made. The law was that misdemeanor arrests must be made at the scene, or a warrant is needed. It didn't completely win the case for me, but I cited the dead man statute to a probate court judge, and he not only agreed with my position but also used my argument, including the citation to the statute, verbatim in his written order. Obligatory IANAL disclaimer. My mom was getting sued by a debt collection company that was well known for suing people as a means of threatening them. I had some time and I looked up the laws on debt collection. Where we lived at the time, you had the right to demand in writing that they provide evidence that they actually hold the debt, and they had a certain amount of time to respond under the law or they forfeit any right they had to collect said debt. I sent them a certified letter. We never heard back from them. When we went to court, I submitted the receipt for the certified letter and said they had failed to provide the proof within the legal time frame and cited the law. Case dismissed with prejudice. The lawyer for their side didn't even care. IANAL. My buddy got out of a DUI because of his hot GF. His lawyer went with the improper procedures route. My buddy refused to blow on site, requesting to blow at the police station. They had to do 3 consecutive tests, and he was allowed a witness to attend the tests. He called his girlfriend and she was not able to make it for the first test, but they let her in for the following 2. One of the rules is that the officer performing the test must keep his eyes on the accused throughout all 3 tests, to ensure nothing fishy happened. His lawyer called his smoke show girlfriend to the stand, and argued that the officer performing the test had to have taken his eyes off of my buddy to look at her. They won. So Virginia is weird. Our cities and counties are independent of each other. Sometimes out-of-state folks don't understand this and file suit where they shouldn't. They also try calling and asking for that information, but that constitutes legal advice, so they get mad when you refuse to answer. IANAL. We purchased a motorcycle at the beginning-ish of the year. DMVs are horribly backed up and we got an appointment as soon as we possibly could to get plates and registration. Day of the appointment we are very excited to finally have everything legally registered. We go get a VIN verification which didn't take as long as we thought, so we thought, let's go grab some lunch. We parked and paid for parking and then came back to a ticket for no plates on the vehicle. The officer wrote the ticket for a city ordinance that states it is illegal to drive, park, etc., any vehicle that has been assigned a license plate or plates, without having a plate attached to said vehicle. Great news. I haven't been assigned a license plate. Ticket dropped. My friend got off his Dewey case for smoking weed with his buddy because the officer mixed up their last names. Virginia divorce. Female spouse was cheating on well-off male spouse. Man found out, started divorce proceeding, and women found out she would get no spousal support. She did however find out about a concept called condonation, which means if you sleep with someone after knowing they committed adultery, you have forgiven them and can get spousal support. Well, one night of text messages and a few photos confirmed it, and client received a lucrative spousal settlement based on the new information.